There is a trap that millions of people are living inside right now, and they know it is a trap and they cannot get out of it. Not because the door is locked. Because the salary is good. Because leaving means uncertainty and staying means discomfort, and between discomfort and uncertainty, most people choose discomfort every single time. They go back on Monday morning. They drag themselves through Tuesday. They survive Wednesday. They start breathing again on Friday evening. And then Sunday comes, and the dread returns like something physical in the chest. And they lie there thinking, I cannot keep doing this. And then Monday arrives and they do it again. This is not a crisis of willpower. This is not laziness. This is one of the most honest human struggles that exists. And Islam has something very specific to say about it. Something most Muslims sitting in that trap have never heard directly applied to their situation. Welcome to Gentle Ustaz. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Let us get into this. There is a woman whose story I want to tell you. And in the middle of that story there is one thing she discovered about how provision actually works in Islam that made the trap she had been in for 2 years suddenly look completely different. Stay with me until we get there because it is the thing that changes everything. She had taken the job because she needed it. That is important to understand. She was not naive. She was not chasing a dream. She was a practical woman in her late 20s who had responsibilities and a rent that needed paying and a family that she was quietly supporting without making it anyone's business. And when the offer came, she looked at the number and she took it. Not because the role excited her. Because the number made sense. The first 6 months were manageable. Hard, but manageable. By the end of the first year, something had shifted. Not dramatically. Just the slow accumulation of small things. The way her manager spoke to her in meetings. The way her ideas were heard and then presented by someone else as their own. The way she stayed late regularly and was thanked with an email. The way she woke up Monday morning and felt a specific heaviness in her chest that she did not feel on any other morning of the week. The way Sunday evenings had become something she dreaded rather than enjoyed because Sunday evening was just the waiting room for Monday morning. She started crying on Sunday nights. Not every week at first. Occasionally. And then more regularly. And then so regularly that it stopped feeling dramatic and started feeling like just something she did on Sunday nights. She would lie in the dark and tell herself she needed to leave. And then she would think about the salary. And she would stay. The salary was doing something very specific to her. It was not making her happy. She was not under any illusion about that. But it was making her afraid of the alternative. Every time she imagined leaving, she immediately imagined the gap. The month or 2 or 3 without income. The uncertainty of what came next. The very real possibility that the next thing might not come as quickly as she needed it to. And the fear of that gap was bigger than the pain of staying. So she stayed. 2 years passed this way. 2 years of Sunday nights and Monday mornings and gradually diminishing versions of herself at work. And something else was happening that she noticed but did not connect to the job for a long time. She was becoming spiritually smaller. Not in the dramatic way, she was still praying, still practicing. But the quality of her prayer had changed. The energy she brought to her remembrance of Allah had changed. She was tired in a way that sleep was not fixing. And she realized at some point that the exhaustion was not physical. It was the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from spending 40 hours a week in an environment that was not aligned with who she was and what she valued. The drain was not just professional. It was spiritual. She mentioned it during a conversation that was not about work at all. She mentioned it the way people mention things they have been carrying for a long time, briefly sideways, as if testing whether it was safe to say it directly. And the woman she was speaking to said something that stopped her completely. She said, "Do you actually believe that your provision comes from Allah?" Not as a question with judgment in it. As a genuine question that required a genuine answer. And she sat with that question for a long time. Because the honest answer was not the confident yes she would have given in a different context. The honest answer was, "I believe it in theory. But I have been acting as if my provision comes from this salary. And those are not the same thing at all. Islam has a position on provision that most Muslims know in their heads, and very few have actually transferred to their daily decisions. The position is this: every single thing you will ever receive in this life was written for you before you were born. Not approximately written. Specifically written. The amount. The source. The timing. All of it. The Prophet said if you were to flee from your provision the way a deer flees from a predator, your provision would still catch you. Your provision will catch you. This means that the salary you are afraid to leave is not the source of your provision. It is one of the doors through which your already written provision has been arriving. And if that door closes, by your choice or not, your provision does not disappear. It finds a different door. This is not inspirational language dressed up as theology. This is one of the most practically significant beliefs in Islam. Because the entire structure of fear that keeps people in jobs that are draining them is built on one assumption: that if this salary goes away, the provision goes away with it. And Islam says directly and clearly, that assumption is wrong. The provision and the salary are not the same thing. The salary is temporary. The provision is written, and it will come. Now this does not mean leave your job tomorrow with no plan. The Prophet also said tie your camel, take your means, make your effort, plan intelligently. What Islam is dismantling is not the instruction to be practical. It is the fear that is so large it has become the main factor in the decision. The fear that has expanded until it is bigger than the belief. The fear that is making a woman cry on Sunday nights and go back on Monday mornings, not because she has weighed the options carefully, but because the fear of the gap has overwhelmed every other consideration. There is something else Islam says about this that is less often discussed. The Prophet spoke about what happens to a person spiritually when they spend their hours in something that depletes them versus something that builds them. He spoke about the importance of what you do with your time, because time is not just productivity, it is the material your life is made of. A person who spends the largest portion of their waking hours in an environment that diminishes them, that treats them poorly, that is misaligned with their values, that person is using the most significant resource they have in a way that produces depletion. And depletion over years becomes something more serious. It becomes the slow erosion of who you actually are. Islam says your work is not separate from your worship. The way you earn, the environment you earn in, the intentions you carry into your work, all of it is connected to your spiritual life. This is not an abstract principle. It is a practical reality that shows up in exactly the way it showed up for the woman in this story. The drain was not just professional. It was spiritual. Because the professional and the spiritual are not separate categories in this faith. They are the same life. So what does this mean practically for someone sitting in that trap right now? It means the first thing to examine is not your resume or your options or your savings account. It is the belief that is underneath the fear. The belief about where your provision actually comes from. Because if you genuinely believed, not theoretically, but in a way that moved through your actual daily decisions, that your provision is written and it will come, the fear of the gap would not disappear completely, but it would become a manageable factor in the decision rather than the overwhelming one. And then the practical steps become possible to take. Updating the resume. Making the connections. Giving yourself a timeline. Taking the means while trusting the source. Tying the camel while trusting Allah. Both things together, effort and surrender, which is the Islamic approach to every significant decision in life. The woman in this story left the job. Not immediately after that conversation. 3 months later, with a plan and a timeline and a genuine transfer of where she believed her provision came from. And the gap she had feared for 2 years lasted 6 weeks. And what came after was not perfect. But it was hers. And she stopped crying on Sunday nights. If you want to go deeper into what Islam says about provision, rizq and the complete framework for work and wealth in this faith, it is all in our Complete Muslim's Guide to Islam. There is a full chapter on what Islam says about wealth and provision with the Islamic principles that the woman in this story learned and applied. The link is in the description below. The bear eating the honeycomb with his eyes swollen shut is one of the most honest images of a very specific human experience. Drained. Exhausted. Half blind from it. But still eating. Still consuming the thing that is not actually feeding you. Still choosing the honey over the clarity. If that image made something in your chest move when you first saw it, that movement was recognition. And recognition is the beginning of every change that has ever happened in anyone's life. You are not trapped by the salary. You are trapped by what you believe the salary is. And Islam is very specific about what it actually is. It is a door, not the source. And doors can change without the provision changing. Share this with one person who has been crying on Sunday nights. They do not need to tell you that is what they have been doing. You already know who they are.